to questions and response. And we are ready. Let me just change my notes into English. And just give me with a thumbs up. How was that conversation? Give me just a few thumbs ups, thumbs middle, thumb down. If you didn't think it was good, it's okay. If you didn't think it was good. I'm very excited to share this with you. And um, today, this is my goal. I have 4 questions. And my goal is to hopefully tackle these 4 questions, but then if I don't, we'll still have Q&R, questions and response, where we go deeper into this. The first question I want us to explore is, how do we make a space in our community? And this is going to be kind of a summary of where I left last week, with a wide range of voices and perspectives. How is that possible, David? 2, if you consider yourself a follower of Jesus or not, how, especially if you do, how, as a follower of Jesus, we can engage in disagreement without division. 3, I want to give you something extremely practical of how you can see the difference between reacting and responding to something, especially to difficult situations. How do I know that I'm not just reacting, that I'm actually responding? And last thing, what does it look like to be rooted in love when we see things differently? Okay? So they're going to be my 4 simple questions for today to tackle. I know that in our community, we come from all sorts of backgrounds, and I love that. And this is why the first question is, how do we make space for a wide range of voices and perspective? Because when Tiffany and I decided to plant this church, we knew that we wanted to bring people that had a wide range of different perspectives. And last week, I shared with you this idea of there are many communities that focus on different things. And I think every church should be different. I don't think we all should focus on the same things. And I don't think the Experience Church is the solution for everyone either. I understand that. But what I do think is important is that we differentiate between, and this is where I started last week, are we going to be a limited or bound set thinking type of community? Are we going to be like a fuzzy set thinking as a community? Or are we going to have something that brings us together as center? This is where we started last week. Bounded set, fuzzy set, or center set thinking. And I begin by sharing with you that bounded set thinking is I said to you that limitations or boundaries are not necessarily bad, that we need boundaries sometimes. Like there is boundaries on roads that keep us safe. But I share with you that a boundary set, when it comes to a community of faith, what it ends up communicating many times is inclusion or exclusion. That sometimes when we set a line in the ground, what it ends up doing is creating a sense of belonging for a few people and shame for others, judgment for a few people and grace for others. Because we make our identity statement to be something not based on a relationship, but something based on a line. And this is where I give you examples of this last week. But what I want to summarize, because to create or to give space for voices with all throughout the spectrum of our humanity, we cannot only allow, if we put a line in the sand, it's going to be simple, yes. And we seek simplicity. It's going to be more clear. You may say that it was clear when we know who's in and who's out. But you know what it also will give us? It will, by result, create enemies of other people. or it creates a division between me and others. And if there was something that Jesus never do is create a division among humans. Like what he did, the best job that he did, that he modeled for you and me, is to give equal value to every human being. So if you go into any kind of conversation and all of a sudden you can hear the enemies is this group of people or the enemies is X, Y, or Z, you can be very aware that that's a boundary set type of thinking. We're creating a line, and this is who is in, and this is who is out. Now we also, and this is just should be a summary because we explored this last week more. The other way is that we can, then those of us that say, no, well, we're not going to create lines, then we can go to the other side of the spectrum. And it's what I call the fuzzy set thinking, right? We're just going to, no lines, zero lines. And last week we explored that this idea, a lot of the times, it creates very individualistic groups. We don't work cohesively. We don't depend on other humans because it's all about me, my definitions, and even it's maybe just me and God or me and myself. And I don't believe that that every human being was created to be individualistic. I think there's a culturally and throughout the scriptures, there's a big weight on this idea of depending on a creator and depending on each other. That's what makes us humans. So what is the third alternative? And I share with you this idea of center set. This idea not about measuring something that you can do or a class you can go to belong, but this idea of orientation. Where is your life pointing to? Where are your life aligning to? And that is so much harder to level or grade. Absolutely. Why? Because you, and we mentioned this for us, is the person of Jesus. But we mentioned that this idea that I can be close to Jesus, but what my life can be faced a different direction. Or I can be very far from Jesus, like I don't even know, but I'm aligning, and my focus is to find more about that person. So in our community is about orientation. You can be close to the center and be oriented away from it, or you can be far away from the center and be oriented towards it. So when we operate in this way, what we need to reinforce, and what I guess the temptation that we will all have is to always try to add more things to that center. That is the temptation that we will have, to create a line, to create like this idea of who's in and who's out, and that just doesn't lead to the type of community that we're trying to create here. And by the way, that you've been creating for many years. So the natural question then is, well, and I addressed this last week in terms what if I'm not a follower of Jesus? I talked about that last week, but today I want to address this idea. If I am a follower of Jesus, how then can I engage without division? How can I be engaged in this community that it doesn't necessarily create division when we come from a different perspective? The Apostle Paul uses this two statements that I love. In 1 Corinthians, he is writing this letter to a group of believers already, and he tells them this: what I'm about to tell you is of first importance. And he goes on, and it's something very small, but he focuses on Jesus. It's like, I'm going to tell you what is the most important. But then to a letter to the Romans, he uses another phrase. He says, I want to talk to you of disputable matters. So to one group, he says, this is what's most first importance. To other group, he says, I want to talk to you about other things that are disputable matters. Okay, so I want to give you 3 words right now that I want you to be extremely aware as you come to any group, your family, your partner, a community like this, your work, there are three things sometimes that we use them interchangeably that I want us to separate: our opinions, our beliefs, and our convictions. Our opinions, our beliefs, and our convictions. The way we, this is kind of what Paul said. What are of first importance, and what are disputable matters? Opinions. Opinions is something that we listen on a podcast. Opinions is something that we saw on social media. Opinions is what we see in the news. They're intuitive, they're quick, they're one-liners. We haven't studied the other side of that point of view. And guess what? You and I would tend to be so passionate about our opinions. And it's normal. It is normal, but I just want you to be aware those are only opinions. We get to held loosely our opinions because we have not studied them. And I think this is so, so key in terms of us, our community, and knowing that when I'm so passionate about that, that you pause and say, okay, is this an opinion? Is this my belief? Or is this a conviction? I'm gonna held my opinions very loosely. Then what is a belief? A belief is something that we actually have dig into for a while. We study this. We can actually articulate the other side of this idea. Now has turned into a belief. And once you do that, you're gonna notice a few things. One, you're gonna hold a lesser group of ideas as a belief. Why? Because you don't have the time to study everything, because we don't know it all. And the other thing you're going to notice is when you study the other side of something, you're going to approach it with a lot of more humility. Talk to somebody, talk to a doctor, talk to a pilot. And when they have already done so much work, they already know that they know all, that they not know all that there is to know. I'm pretty sure I said that with a lot of accent, but I hope you got my point. Once you dig into studying something, you learn that there is more to learn. So you approach with it, or you approach it with a lot of more humility. And then you have convictions. A conviction is something that you maybe will die for. And that will be something that you will not have a lot of things at that level. The things that define the center of what you believe is just it has to be very, very few things. This is why Paul says there's a few things that are first importance, and there's a lot of things that are for conversations. And the problem is, for a community, we tend to elevate our convictions. Sorry, we tend to elevate our opinions and our beliefs to the level of a conviction. We tend to make a lot of more things our conviction when in reality they're not. Because this gets to be simple. This gets to be an orientation thing. And it goes in an order of you're going to be very passionate about the first thing, even though you don't have all the information. Why? Because it resonates with you, because they use a line that triggers you, because it moves you emotionally. But if we are going to be a community who actually make love and even makes Jesus the center of it, we're going to pay attention. There's going to be very, very, very few things that we go, oh, this is my conviction. And that is simple, is what's first important. Then there's going to be things that I'm going to dig into, that I'm going to learn and everything. And with that, it's going to come a lot of humility. And because this is a belief now, but I'm open because I know that I know that I know I don't know everything that it is to know. And then we can hold a lot looser our opinions, the podcast that you listen to, the news that you listen to, because those are meant to more like moves us up emotionally, that actually give us something that brings us together. Okay, here we go. So number 3 is the question. The third question for today I want to explore with you is, what is the difference between reacting versus responding? Because this is not, first is we're a community that invites different voices. Then we are also paying attention of what's coming up in terms of my opinions, beliefs, and convictions. So now how do I know, or what is the something practical where I can start differentiating? How do I respond or react, especially during difficult moments? So I want to give you an acronym that I learned from um, a company called Onsite. Um, and this I love it because this was very helpful even for me to learn when how to respond rather than react. And it's this acronym. And let me tell you why I want to share this with you. Um, this week, with everything that happened with the school shootings, with the assassination uh, with Charlie Kirk, and even with personal stuff that I'm going with my family, and um, the September 11th anniversary. Um, I don't know about you, but every person felt like they had something to say. Like everybody was jumping into something, writing text, and in my mind, I was thinking, why do we feel like we have to respond, or why do we feel we are? To me, it felt like we are all reacting to something, and very few people were right now taking the time to actually, am I gonna respond to this? And I made it a task for me not to say anything, because that will be a reaction of me. And guess what? Reactions keep the algorithm going. Most people say something because they know people are gonna click, and that's gonna keep their algorithm going. So they have to. It's a vicious cycle. I feel like I have to say something, and I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna be rewarded for saying something. So I want to give you an acronym. This is gonna feel so hard, but I think it's so helpful. The acronym is the word STOP. 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 First word is literally stop, pause, catch yourself. You're experiencing something, either a response of somebody, uh, whatever you're seeing in the news, an event, and we're gonna remember this acronym. Stop. I'm gonna catch myself right now. Second letter T. Take a deep breath. And to me, I actually take 4 deep breaths, not one. I just think of the STOP. So one breath for each of the letters. And then O, and this is so key. O, we're gonna observe and notice. We're gonna observe and notice my thoughts, the sensations in my body, and my emotions. We're gonna observe and notice our thoughts, the sensations in our bodies, and our emotions. Let me give you an example of a few questions that can help you troubleshoot that. What are you feeling in your body? What are you noticing in my body? What am I noticing in my body? Examples. Do I feel something in my stomach? Do I feel my heart racing? Am I have sweaty hands? Or am I sweating? Do I feel hot? Do I feel cold? See, in the past, we used to think emotions and even our body were not as important as what we were thinking, like facts, rational. We always thought that this was what it was in control. Therefore, we should pay attention to the facts, not the emotions. And that's all science. Now we know that our brain is connected to our nervous system. In other words, the way you grew up, or maybe trauma or things that you experience, moved your body and triggered your your nervous system in such a way that whenever you're facing something, your body's reacting. And if you're not able to control your body, you cannot even trust what you're thinking. Because you may know something factually, but actually your body is moving you or is giving you signals of something else happening. So that's why we observe and notice, think of, or we acknowledge, what are we feeling? Or what sensations am I feeling? Then we're going to talk about, what am I feeling, my emotions. Do I feel fear, anxiety? Am I feeling depressed? Am I feeling, like I need to say something? Do I have, like reacting to something? We're going to observe, notice our sensations in our body, our emotions, and then our thoughts. What am I thinking? So we actually moving from the ground up, not from our head down, which we thought is how we control. Why? Because again, our nervous system is already reacting. It's giving us signals of something. So we're going to go from the ground up, and then we're going to think of, what am I thinking about this issue? And if you give yourself to STO, then we get to P. If you get yourself time to stop, take a deep breath, observe, then when you get to P, you're going to be able to proceed. And when you proceed and you give chance to you to breathe and to notice what's going on with you, then you will have awareness of how to respond, and it won't be a reaction anymore, because you're giving yourself time to process what's going on inside of us. And most likely, you will proceed with kindness. You will proceed with humility. You will proceed very aware of what needs to happen in you, rather than something that I'm just reacting outside of me. And we're going to have time to explore all of this and questions and responses if you have more questions. The last question I want to tackle that I think is helpful in this series is, what does it look like to stay rooted in love, even when we see things differently? Since we know already that we're going to have held a few things as convictions, the way we're going to explore this, if it's not going to be with boundaries, if it's going to be how we're orienting our lives, or what are we facing towards, we're really going to make all these conversations that my responsibility is not to measure what's happening out there or what's happening with other people's faith, but the measurement is how it's transforming me. How are we become more responsible of how is my life being oriented right now? And we do that here beautifully. When we finish here, many times I leave you with a question, I leave you with a song, and in that time you're actually practicing this idea of what is God doing right now in you? How are you pursuing this transformation that God begins? And the most beautiful thing, how do you acknowledge that actually is God also pursuing you? That is not just you doing work or doing whatever you have to do, but is you being this human that God is so in love with, and He has created a way for us to be restored with Him. And He's saying, I am in pursuit of you. You're not in pursuit of me as much as I love you. And in that, we can rest. In that, will give us a much open approach, a much loving approach. And I believe this is one of the ways a community is embrace about this idea of loving our neighbors as we love ourselves. I remember if you've been part of any other church like I have growing up, I do remember this we don't even use this language here, but I do remember whenever you finish the message or the service, what you talk a lot about is how was the sermon. Like I remember standing outside of the church I was part of physically, saying goodbye to people, and people felt like they had to tell me what's a good message. What a good message you that was the word, Pastor. Like they gave you all this like affirmation that you're not seeking enough any kind of affirmation. Or I wasn't seeking any kind of affirmation. Why? Because this is not a for us, this is not a entertainment point where you get to grade me or the music that I play or the way we do church. You actually get to, and this is so beautiful about our community, we get to evaluate ourselves and meditate on that and seek God on that. And so many times you hear Jeanette saying, David, I did not get that at all from your message. What I felt God spoke to me during your time is this, and she has something completely new. And some of you go like, oh yeah, that was awesome. Me too. And that is actually the Holy Spirit moving in such a way in us where we get to evaluate or we get to see our lives in light of orientation to the person of Jesus. And it's not individualistic because we get to share it with other people. And we get to say, I feel I'm facing this way. And other people get to be like, ooh, I totally see that in you. Yes, I want to celebrate with you. Or, oh, I wanna support you in whatever way I can support you right now. That's the beauty of a center set church. That's the beauty of us having a place where everyone is welcome and where everyone is has a seat in the table. And this, what I'm sharing with you, is not just something we believe from the head down. It's actually something we now embody, right? It's something now that is following Jesus becomes something that we live out, something we believe rationally on the right things. Um, I spoke a lot. It's long. It was long, and I also want to hear you. Um, so here is what we're gonna do. I would love to actually. I'm gonna close with a quick word of prayer, and then in light of that, I want to go into our question response time. If you have any questions to explore or anything that um, you want to share. Father, I thank you for my friends. I thank you for this community, Lord. Uh, I thank you for this desire also for us not to, for me, Lord, not to just make it simple, but also make it meaningful, transformational, because it's you who is in the pursuit of us. And sometimes I forget that. It's also us how each one of us learns how to treat my neighbor my friend in Zoom, my daughter, my son, my partner, my husband, my wife, in a way that honors them and also a way that honors me. Thank you for the example of Jesus. I pray, Lord, that you evoke in each one of us, that you bring to the surface maybe questions or things that we are wrestling with, and that we get to again practice. Instead of stop, take a deep breath, observe,